Well, what is up, everybody? Keith, aka Gator Guy 231. It is Tuesday, December 8th, and we've reached the final matches of the group stage of the Champions League. Look, I think the teams are probably more than pumped to get to this point. Should really kind of break up a lot of fixture congestion, especially, for these top guys that, really have to not only focus on what they're going to do on the weekend with their top players, but in these midweek games that are of really big importance, because Champions League is one of the most profitable competitions that teams can enter. So should be an interesting day of games. How we're going to do this, I'm going to start out, go over who's playing for what, and then I normally go team by team, but just with the reality of a lot of teams likely to do a ton of squad rotation, I'm just going to kind of go over a few kind of building ideas and like guys that I'm likely going to build around, give you a really good idea of what I plan to do. I'll mention some pivots and some GPP routes, and we'll go from there. So quick reminder, bottom right of the screen, subscribe button, please go ahead and hit that now if you enjoy these videos. You've been watching for a while, been thinking about hitting that button. It's cool. I give you permission. Hit the subscribe button. You will get nothing but awesome DFS content coming to your YouTube feed once you do so, and there's no charge. So it's a great way to help us out at FSI continue to grow this channel. All right, with that out of the way, let's jump into the odds in the games. And actually, before I do that, I like this format better on Draftkings. So I'm going to just kind of go over the groups and who's playing for what. So the big thing where everybody's playing for something, except for back Istanbul, but Group H, Leipzig and Manchester United, for all intents and purposes, is winning in advance, while PSG versus Istanbul for PSG is winning in advance. So those are three games that those teams are going to be playing all out. PSG is the single biggest favorite on the slate at well over a -1,000 with a 4 total. So the odds tell us, and DFS conventional wisdom says there's no way that you're fading anything from PSG. But we'll go over into that more shortly. All right, so that's Group H. Leipzig, Man U, PSG. We should expect to see close to number one all-out squads. Group G, Barcelona and Juventus. They play each other, and that is the game for who wins the group. Now, do teams like that at this point care about winning the group versus finishing second? I'd say yes, but with an asterisk that if all of a sudden they showed up and didn't, or subbed early or focused domestically, especially Barcelona, who's struggling like crazy domestically and needs to get going to secure a top 4 place for next year if they don't win the Champions League. Which, look, I'm sure nobody in that locker room is looking around at each other going, oh, we have no chance at winning the Champions League, but they probably should. So does Koeman decide that it's a time to work on changing up the look or something like that? Who knows? But that game, technically, I was playing for a lot, but who knows how invested they will be. I'm considering both are all the way through. Kiev versus Fernandes. See, I still can't say it. That said, this game means a ton. So keep in mind with these group stages, third place goes to the Europa League. While it's a step down in money, when you're Fernandes or Kiev, like millions of dollars still means millions of dollars. So I think it's going to be huge for them. So that game means a ton for third place, staying in Europe. The other team will go back to domestic league and have no more Europe. Final group is Group E. This group actually has nothing going on. Chelsea is already advanced and won the group. Sevilla has already advanced and won second place, finished second. Rennes and Krasnodar are playing for nothing. So all 4 teams there could end up with big squad rotation. All right, let's jump into the odds, and then, like I said, roster construction. So we see PSG is the huge favorite, and is the single biggest thing we need to deal with. Minus 1122. The second biggest favorite is Chelsea at close to minus 400, who is not going to have their first team. So just keep that in mind. The biggest favorite in the slate is 3 times a bigger favorite than a team that's not even planning to play their first squad. Just that perspective should tell you why we're going to be likely trying to jam in at least 2 big PSG pieces. From then you got Sevilla minus a very, very slight favorite versus Rennes. That's only a 2.25 total, and also PSG 4 total, and at minus 1122, almost over 3 goals are coming from their side or their implied total. Man U and Leipzig, very much a square game, 3 total. Then we have Kiev, a slight favorite at home, minus 122, 2.5 total. And then the final game is Barcelona and Juve, Barcelona plus 110. All right, so let's just kind of go into the builds. I think the first thing that people are going to do is, even though he's 12-8, is jam in Neymar. Not only does he have PKs, not only does he have a share of set pieces, huge open play value, but in games where PSG should roll and have a ton of shots, the amount of shots assisted that Neymar is going to rack up is insane. We've seen him before. And I didn't look at it coming into this, but I remember, I want to say it's like 2 or 3 years ago, we had a Ligue 1 game where I think Neymar put up well over 60 DK, multiple goals. I want to say it was like double-digit shots assisted, multiple assists. Like, his floor here is probably closer to 20 than it is 10, with a ceiling potentially in the 40s. So I just don't see a way that you can get around one of the top 5 DFS players in the world. Is a minus 1100 favorite. So I'm just going to be locking in Neymar. I think between, the likes of Chelsea, the likes of, really like Rennes, Sevilla, the teams that aren't going to be playing for much, there's a really good chance we get some good value there. Maybe like a very, very cheap fullback or 2. I'd really like 2. And we can make it work. I think the biggest decision slate context-wise is what you do at the second forward spot. Actually, I'll say 2 things. What you do at second forward spot and what you do with Bruno Fernandes. So before we go into Bruno, let's talk about like what I would like to do. What I would like to do is plug in Kylian Mbappe. I know this is like terrible analysis, but it kind of feels like Mbappe is overdue at this point for a goal. He scored on the weekend, but in Champions League, does he even have one? I don't even think he has a goal in Champions League. I could be wrong. Yeah, he does not have a goal in the group stage of Champions League, which for somebody of Mbappe's talent, somebody of Mbappe's kind of trying to think of what the right word is, desire to move on. Like, he wants to be at Madrid, or he wants to be at, it really is Madrid, but he wants to be the next Galactico in world football. To go through a group stage with the likes of Manchester United, the likes of Leipzig, and Istanbul in your group, like 3 teams that aren't exactly defensively stout and not score, isn't great. So I do feel he's overdue. That's a terrible reason to pick somebody, but it is what it is. Sub 10K, I think he's actually very fair on prices, just when you look at him comparison to, Messi, Ronaldo, and Giroud. I think he's really solid. If, he's starting through the middle, if that front line is Neymar, Mbappe through the middle, and Di Maria, I think, from a floor perspective, that you can make the argument that Di Maria's floor is infinitely better. I do think that there's a severe difference in goal scoring and just overall upside. So, I don't know if that warrants the 300, but just it's there. So I really do think that filling with 2 PSG forwards is going to be the way most people will go, and the way I'm likely to go. The curveball is that if they do start what a lot of people are predicting, which is Neymar on the left, Moise Kean through the middle, and Neymar on Mbappe on the right. Moise Kean's only 7,200, so over a $2,500 savings from that top tier. It gives you more flexibility throughout your lineup. Look, obviously Kean between Di Maria and Mbappe is significantly less, DFS talented, DFS friendly, all of those things. But look, if this was Edison Cavani, if it was Neymar, Cavani, and Mbappe up front, and Cavani was close to $3,000 cheaper than everybody else, we probably just would kind of lock and load him. So, maybe we should be thinking the same thing with Ken. He's just not my type of player, a striker that's going to be goal dependent. I'm not normally where I want to go, but 7,200, really solid price. Realistically, too, from a GPP perspective, it'll be very, very popular stack. But Neymar, Ken, Mbappe, if that's the front three, or just stack the front three and go from there. So I think that's forward. To me, it's really tough to make an argument for a lot of other players at forward. They're more GPP. And Nkunku, no chance at 8,900. Especially, he's been taking close to a monopoly when in for Leipzig, but you always have Angelino. If Forsberg's in after his masterclass versus Munich, he always can threaten some sets. Like, you just don't want to overpay for a floor on this slate with that PSG potential onslaught moving it, looming overhead. I think Rashford and Abraham from a GPP perspective won't be owned. Rashford, we know, excels on the counterattack. So I think Manchester United, there's a very good chance that this is a game where all he gets to deploy his favorite tactics, which is sit back, kind of in a Jose and Spurs way, sit back and then just kill them on the counter. And Bruno plus Rashford can do that very well. Just scrolling down more, Pulisic could be really interesting for Chelsea. I skipped over Tammy Abraham. I really think Chelsea stack is probably one of my favorite tournament stacks from an ownership leverage standpoint. I just think PSG is going to be so owned. Neymar will be so owned. Either Mbappe, Di Maria, or Ken will be so owned that if you wanted to show up with a Pulisic plus Tammy Abraham plus his Emerson, I'll get to him shortly, stack with whoever plays right wing for them, whether it's Kai, Havertz, whoever. I think it's going to be Kai. But you want to show up that type of stack, that I don't think that will be owned at all. And if PSG, let's say, wins 2-0, Neymar gets 1 goal, 22 DK, so he did fine, but he didn't kill you. And the other goal is Marquinhos, something like that. But then you nail Pulisic, Tammy, Kai, and then a great floor game from Emerson, you could be rolling. So I do think that's a really interesting way to differentiate yourself in GPP. But Pulisic, I do think, is cash viable as well. Has been one of Chelsea's best players of the last 2 years. He's probably pissed to high hell that he's lost his spot really over injury. Really no fault to his own that Ziyech came in and that, the team's biggest signing, Timo Werner, looks better on the left than he does through the middle. And, Pulisic's just getting forced out. But yeah, I think he's cash viable, but probably better GPP play. Then we start scrolling down. We just kind of get into, striker zone on dogs, things of that nature. I want to make sure I just don't miss anybody. Look, Kiev guys are interesting. I just can't say it. I'm not even going to try. But they can leak goals out. So if you want to do, look at a few Kiev pieces, I think that's fine. Verbic is their second leading scorer domestically. Gerson Rodriguez is a guy that we've seen play in Turkey before and was quite good. So, they're both sub 6K, but I think more GPP. Uzuni, if you want to go on the other side, he's taking some set pieces for them, scored a few goals, is fine. Zubkov could also take some set pieces for them, depending on the lineup. And then we got, some Seville guys that we'll mention. Franco Vasquez, you could do a lot worse. He's somebody, in La Liga and interleague slates, has been 7, 8K before. He'll be playing likely in the midfield, but 4,500 if you want to punt out forward is fine. Choi Nguyen is actually their I just can't say it. But anyhow, he's their leading scorer domestically. And I think there's just like a few more down here. Obviously, one of the biggest things, just watch for lineups. I kind of gave you the top guys that we're going to target. That was kind of the plan here. But just look at lineups, and try not to miss the values. If you try to leave comments, after 2, there's no chance that I'll be catching it. But if you want to drop something before 2 o'clock, really I would say even 1:45, I'll do my best to answer. But the last forward I think I want to mention is Israel from from them. He also takes some set pieces. I think he has like 3 or 4 goals domestically, so you could obviously do a lot worse. All right. From there, we obviously talked about a second forward. Just for the sake of this, I'm going to put in Mbappe because that is who I want to go. I think the big question here, actually one more before I want to do it. It's crazy. I kind of skipped over Messi and Ronaldo. I just think that's just too – it's just not the right slate. It's crazy. So maybe there's a great GPP play, right? It's Lionel Messi at low ownership at home. But Juve is a good team. Barcelona at this point really isn't. So I just don't necessarily think that I want to take 2 huge teams playing each other and giving them the opportunity cost of the other big PSG piece to get one of them. I just think that you have to factor in odds. You have to factor in how much PSG is playing for. And the fact that who they're playing against leaks goals like it's no business. Like Leipzig could have scored probably 6 or 7 goals versus Istanbul, and that was in Istanbul. So now we have them in Paris, must win for PSG. I just don't see a way that PSG isn't hanging multiple goals, and I want to do my best I can to get a piece. All right. Midfields, I already talked about almost every midfield forward that I'm interested in. So I think the biggest decision from here is, do you lock Bruno Fernandes? We know his floor is absolutely ridiculous, even when Telles is on and taking some set pieces, and even when United is playing on the counter. Arguably, Bruno gets even better on the counter. His floor is worse, but then his upside goes up. I think 9,200 is really, really fair. And even with Neymar, Mbappe, and Bruno, we have an average of 36.40 left. There's going to be enough value that you can make it work. So I think this is how I would love to start my lineup. Ultimately, I think Bruno becomes the decision on the slate. If you don't go Bruno, it's interesting. You might end up going like the Ken route, or maybe you go Pulisic, or maybe you just look at lineups and just wait to see what happens. I think, I've kind of said it. My order of like teams I want to get exposure to goes PSG, then it's going to go Chelsea, then probably, I don't even want to say United, Bruno. And then I kind of just want to jump to the like Kiev. I think they have some interesting pieces, especially as we go down lower, I'll mention. And then at that point, it's just going to see what happens with lineups. What's Sevilla going to do? Rennes is quite bad, and they're going to rotate. So, the second unit for Sevilla could be interesting. Chelsea's going to be interesting. And then Juve Barcelona, just in my mind, is just almost doesn't exist here. Maybe if there's like a 3,100 hashtag revenge narrative Arthur or something like that, we can go there. But just not crazy about it, especially from a preview perspective. I don't think Beauregard is going to be in. 8,300 is a little too expensive anyways for Sevilla. Oscar, if he's in over, likely for Sevilla, he takes a majority set pieces, but 7,600 is a weird price. I think I'd prefer Pulisic. DePena, I'm not seeing him projected in, and even when he's been in, he hasn't been the guy to target from them. From Kiev, for 2 straight seasons now, their leading scorer is Tsenegath at 6,600. Should be on at least half the set pieces, and also we've seen him on PK duties. So I just think he's a really nice pivot if you don't want to go to Bruno. Gets you close to double-digit floor with goal upside. So I think he's fine. I don't think a lot of people will be on him at 6,600 either. So that makes me pretty interested in him, especially from a tournament perspective. But he's very cash viable as well. I'm not crazy about these Leipzig pieces, even though Manchester United can bleed some DFS points when they're accepting pressure on the counter. Leipzig just passes it around. They don't do a ton of crossing from like outside of set pieces. So I just think that they can become somewhat goal dependent and, not absolutely DFS goodness. So I don't really see a lot of Leipzig pieces that I'll have, which is just interesting considering the stakes in that game. Just at this point, just making sure I bring up stuff. I think I mentioned Verbic already. I think in a lot of ways, once we're here, we're going to be scrolling down. And now just kind of looking for, some surprises. So I do want to bring up Oliver Torres. depending on the Sevilla lineup, could be on set pieces for them. So at 3,800, I think you're fine. Oh, I actually missed one of the guys I wanted to bring up. Shaparenko has been awesome for Kiev most of the season, both domestically and in Champions League. Likely gives a little bit of set pieces too. So if you don't have the money to go up to Senegal, if you're fading Bruno, right, then maybe Shaparenko works. And just for the sake of time, the rest is just going to depend on lineups. All right, final thing, and this defender's going to go quick. I think the best defender on the slate is likely Emerson from Chelsea. He took a monopoly of set pieces for Chelsea last game. Don't see any reason based on lineups that he wouldn't do the same. The only guy that would come in and I think challenge him for set pieces is Mason Mount, who just put up a masterclass on Saturday, and I doubt would start in a game that means nothing to Chelsea. I do put Emerson over to Alex Telles, but look, if you are a huge fan of Telles, you go, it's still half the set pieces. I don't like that Chelsea's not playing for anything, even though, again, like for Emerson, like he gets no domestic league games, so this is his time to show out, maybe work to get a transfer away from the club so he can play more. Like, it's big for Emerson. But if you say, I just want Telles, I want to have people that care about it, like I can't really argue with that. From there, defender to me is about one other guy and just praying for value. The other guy, he started at left back for Sevilla last game, and I don't know why. I'm surprised DK didn't price him up, but Karim Rekic, and he is a center back by trade, like if you look in his previous domestic leagues, but now has multiple games at left back for Sevilla, 7.8 DK. Last game, in a much worse matchup that they got destroyed in versus Chelsea, maybe if he got like even 5 DK for 2,700, and what it will let you do your lineup and just like the flexibility give you, I think he is phenomenal play. We'll just have to look at lineups. Big thing, watch the fullbacks, because this is the position that you most likely are going to have another sub 3,000 guy pop up from one squad. And the way that builds, for me at least, come through, you're going to need one of those. So make sure you're watching out for that. On FanDuel, look, it's going to be pretty easy just to go ahead, plug in Neymar, plug in Mbappe. You should get a center back somewhere that's $7 or less. And if you get 2 of them, you can probably even go plug in Bruno or plug in Moise Kean or plug in, ex-Chelsea player, Pulisic, Tammy Abraham, whoever, and you should be able to make those builds. I think FanDuel will actually be quite fun today because you can even jam in a lot more than you can on DK. All right, that will do it. Thanks so much for watching. Once again, Keith, a.k.a. Gator Guy 231. Good luck in your contest to that. And with that, I say, see you.